To understand this story, you have to go back into the 1950s when we had citrus packing houses and industries that depended on the Southern Pacific Railroad, which ran short trains, just an engine or two with a couple of cars rattling behind, right through the neighborhoods of Coronado, San Diego, Chula Vista, Lemon Grove, and East County. And one of those locomotives, Larry Rose remembers, was engine number 5119.
Well, it would go right past Grossmont High School, which is the oldest high school in East County. It would roll right past that, where the trolley runs today, actually, in the same little canyon. It actually went in the street a couple of places down in South Bay, and they would run into small little industries and packing houses and pick up cars and send them off. That was its everyday job. Pick up produce, send the car out to the world.
That's what Locomotive 5119 did in San Diego from 1955 to 1967, and if you paid attention to those things like Larry Rose did as a kid, this little engine became a familiar sight, like an old friend. But of course, that was back 50 years ago. Must be, you'd think, that old locomotive from his memory would have long ago been scrapped by now. But take a walk with Larry and Dick Pennick of the San Diego Railroad Museum in Campo, past the classic engines the museum has been able to acquire and restore, and take a look at this one. You might not recognize it, painted in different colors, but it's 5119. Come back home.
You don't want to throw something like this away. This is San Diego history. Why? It's the last.
The very last of all of its sisters that had been torn up for scrap, Larry Rose says. And here's where the story turns. How 5119 happened to be saved and brought back to San Diego has everything to do with love.
My wife was the membership director here for 35 years. She passed away from pancreatic cancer in April this year. And this project's dedicated to her. Simple as that.
Tanya Rose was a well-known San Diego folk singer who shared her husband Larry's love for trains and the Railroad Museum. Together, they contributed countless hours here. It was their shared passion. Shortly after her death, Larry heard that 5119 had been located in Modesto, where it had been working for years, still in good shape. He got an idea, but he'd have to act fast.
I didn't need the money anymore to take care of her, so I started selling stock and dipping into my savings and scraped up whatever I could to buy this engine outright.
He bought it, just like that, saved it, as a tribute to her. And so it was in her name that it was put onto a truck and brought to the museum in Campo. In her memory, it'll be repainted to look just as it did when it was such a familiar sight back in the 50s and 60s here. And because it was well maintained and still runs great, it'll find new life carrying the museum's excursion trains full of grown-ups and kids for years to come. In a way, she'll be a part of every one of them.
Well, sure. We'll put a little plaque in it, and someday somebody will find that plaque and they'll wonder who Tanya Rose was. And that's worth it to me, just for that.